I'm David Wynn. I'm GIS Project Manager for the Office of the University Architect at NC State, and I'm happy to be here to moderate the second session of the morning. The first presentation we have coming up is doing more with less using GitHub Cloud Infrastructure and ESRI, and that's being presented by Kristen McNamara and Cameron Carlisle from the city of Asheville. Kristen is a GIS programmer analyst on the business and public technology team for the city of Asheville. Kristen has a master's in GIS from NC State and an undergraduate degree from the University of Vermont in business administration. And Cameron is you're a software developer for the city of Asheville. So please welcome.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for coming to see our presentation. I'm going to start you off with a joke. How'd the Scarecrow win the Nobel Prize? He was outstanding in his field. And when they asked him about it, what did he say?
Hey, it's in my genes.
Ice broken. All right. Our presentation is about doing more with less, which is something I think everybody wants to do. We're going to talk to you a little bit about how we used GitHub, some cloud infrastructure with ESRI to host our web map viewers.
All right, so just to give you guys kind of an idea of like where we're coming from at the city of Asheville, we're a pretty small team. So we end up doing a lot of different things. We're not being able to spend all of our time doing GIS all the time. But we do have two GIS databases. They're both Postgres databases running on Linux servers. And we have a few other additional Windows servers that we maintain locally. And so we're running two instances of ArcGIS for server. One of them is for all of our internal REST services that can't really be shared outside of the organization. And the other one is for all of our external ArcGIS for server REST services. And then we also have a whole host of web app builders that we have, and they range from our big kind of like kitchen sink map viewer that has all of our GIS data on it down to some very small apps that are focused just on like specific processes. And we also have a pretty awesome ELA with ESRI that kind of lets us have like as much ESRI products as we want. So that's pretty cool.
So we found ourselves being able to kind of whip up these wonderful apps pretty quickly, which kind of caught on. So as soon as someone saw one, they're like, oh, I would like one for me, please. So we're like constantly being asked to whip up these app builders, as well as the services that we used to create them with. And so what we were doing was we were putting a lot of, we were asking a lot of our ArcGIS for servers. So we were not only hosting these apps on them, but all the services that are inside the apps. So I don't know if anyone's ever had a server like this, but we were constantly having to do a lot of server management where we're having to fiddle with the ArcGIS for Server Manager, as well as adding a lot of resources to these servers, and then we'd add some more and they'd get consumed right away, add some more, get consumed right away. So we're in this cycle of basically like always having to try to manage these servers to get what we wanted out of them. And
we ended up spending like a lot of time doing that and less time able to actually spend on actually making the apps that our customers actually wanted.
Yeah, and who here would much rather make maps than deal with servers? Hopefully some of you. Great. All right, so we came up with a plan. We knew we needed to reduce our dependency on our local servers to try to get away from having to constantly manage them. But we also wanted to be more redundant and build up our resiliency against crashes. And using the cloud was kind of our idea on how to do that. And we wanted to move as much as we could to the cloud, really give us some time to spend on our maps. And we thought we would do this by taking advantage of free hosting that we have through our enterprise license with ESRI, as well as using GitHub.
All right, so we tried a few things that actually ended up not working. So one of the things that was pretty high on our list was to get our database servers off of our local Linux servers that we maintained in-house and get those up into the cloud. And the natural solution for that seemed like using Amazon Web Services RDS, or the relational database service. And we pretty quickly ran into a bottleneck on that almost right away. And that's when we realized that although our workstations inside the city had really, really good bandwidth from the individual workstations to our server room locally at the city, we didn't have a whole lot of bandwidth going out to the internet at large. So having all of our GIS users in the city going up to AWS to connect to the database just wouldn't be feasible, and it would slow the network down for pretty much everybody at the city. So that kind of crossed RDS off the list. The other thing we had wanted to do was to get all of our ArcGIS server instances up on AWS, and then we kind of ran into the exact same bottleneck with that. If everybody's connecting to ArcGIS for server to pull down REST services, and they're doing that through the internet, it would still slow down the network for everybody. So we kind of had to scratch both of those ideas. But in the near future, this will probably actually be possible. We're working on getting some fiber up to the Amazon place in Virginia. So hopefully when that happens, some of the stuff like using RDS and using EC2 to host ArcGIS for server will be an option in the near future, hopefully. Oh.
Will it mix it in?
Yes. All right, so challenges. So I just spoke about the bandwidth challenges we had, but then we also had some issues with setting up authentication in the cloud with some of our databases. Right now, the Postgres databases that we have use Active Directory, so GIS editors across the city will use Active Directory through Windows authentication to actually log into the databases. And the way that's set up in Postgres is like this configuration file that kind of allows you to do that, and you don't really have access to that configuration file when you're doing RDS. And so that was kind of a roadblock. We'd have to change a lot of how we do business and change a lot of workflows at the city in order to set that up. So at least for the time being, that was another reason not to go down the RDS route. The other thing that we looked at was trying to get as many of our REST services pushed up to ArcGIS Online instead of having them locally on our own ArcGIS for server instances. But the only kind of issue with that was that when you push something up to ArcGIS Online, it becomes just a static copy. And we have all this dynamic data that we're constantly generating at the city. So we have editors in the water department, Public Works who are editing GIS data, and that fresh data needs to be pushed up to ArcGIS Online on a regular basis. So that was sort of a challenge we ran into in trying to figure out how to do that. And Christian will talk about that in just a second. The other thing was that we realized that we needed to, regardless of what stuff we actually ended up moving out to the cloud, we would probably still inevitably be maintaining some GIS servers internally, regardless of what we do, just for like data access security. And we needed some data just to stay inside of our network, regardless of what we could actually move to the cloud. So.
Great. So one of the challenges that we first tried to deal with was, how do we make our ArcGIS Online services dynamic? And so the way we ended up doing it was publishing to ArcGIS Online, which is probably most of you know about. But we used the same MXDs that we did with our ArcGIS for server, so all the symbology was exactly the same. And then we used our ETL software to create jobs that update the services every night, which is about the same as how our ArcGIS for server services were done, because the edit was being pushed to the warehouse, and so this is exactly the same amount of time that it would be updated. And then once everything was dynamic, we used the ArcGIS Online Assistant to replace the services in our maps for our map viewers, which was really easy, and I'll show you that in a second. And then we're going to use these services in our open data site, so all the people that are consuming them and map viewers and consuming them from open data are using the hosted ArcGIS Online instead of on our servers. bringing them down. All right, so we used an ETL software called FME. FME is this really robust transforming software. Basically, you can take, if you, well, I can't really point with this, but this is like a Greenways feature class from our warehouse, and we're just updating it every night to the Greenways ArcGIS Online service. And so that just happens. You could also do it with a Python script, but for us, the FME software is something we're really familiar with, and it's really easy for us to use. There's also, I'm sure, other ETL software that could probably do it as well. So I'm going to try to do a demo. So wish me luck.
Windows P, we'll switch you to.
Windows. Thanks, Cameron.
Dun, dun, dun.
Okay.
Sweet, and then you just find yourself.
I can do it from here, yeah. All right, so.
You got to go down to here
Oh.
and just pick.
Sorry, guys. All right, so here's one of our map viewers. This is just, might actually go to it. Downtown Asheville. It's just some simple points of interest. But I want to show you the greenways. So if you see, like, there's lots of orange dashed lines, and so, there's a little bit of labeling there. Those are proposed greenways that are coming, hopefully soon. And what I want to show you is in the ArcGIS Online Assistant, if you haven't used this as a great developer tool, you can actually update JSON, you can change URLs of services and maps, which is what we're going to do. So, I'm going to select that to update the maps. I'm going to go find my map app. And so how Web App Builder works is it's a shell, and it uses ArcGIS Online maps inside of it. So when you update your map, it updates your app automatically, which is a great way for us to do business. So I'm going to go find my downtown map. Those are all my services. Now I'm going to do this live, so hopefully people in Asheville hopefully I don't break it and everyone down in Asheville is freaked out. So I'm going to look for my greenways. And this is a hosted service. Going to grab it, copy. Now I'm going back to that map. I'm going to, oh man, it didn't copy. There we go, hot dog. All right, I'm going to update it. Wait for that little success. Oh, success. All right, it's changed. Now I'm going to refresh. It's going to pull from that ArcGIS Online map. Please work, please work. And there they are, and they're exactly the same. So those are those greenways. Really easy to do. Thanks.
All right, let's see if I can switch this back without messing stuff up. Is there no clock? No. Where's the presentation at?
That one, right? No, the presenter one. You need another joke?
Oh, which one of these is which? So many tabs. Oh, there it is.
It's not on the screen yet.
Yeah, I know. All right, there we go. All right. All right, so we still had all these like web app builders on our server. They were running on an IIS server, a web server, on a Windows server, on our that we had to maintain. And we wanted to get all those web app builders off of IIS and get them in some sort of hosted environment that we didn't have to worry about. And so at the City of Asheville, we've been using GitHub Pages for several years now to host a variety of apps. And we've had a bunch of these client-side JavaScript applications. So like we have a data access app called Simplicity that's hosted on GitHub. We have like a park finding or park finder app that was up there, but I think we replaced that recently. We have like an app where you can find like parking. So all these little JavaScript apps that are hosted up on GitHub Pages. And it turns out that's exactly what the web app builder is. It's just a JavaScript client-side application. So there's no reason why you couldn't just put it on GitHub Pages. So you may be wondering, what are GitHub Pages? Well, they're just web hosting for static assets. And what do I mean by static assets? I mean anything like an HTML page, a JavaScript file, a CSS file, images, JSON files, any sort of static asset, you could host it on GitHub. One thing to note, that there is a thing called Jekyll that runs kind of under the covers on GitHub Pages, and so it allows you to do some kind of pseudo dynamic stuff using Jekyll, which is a static site generator. And the only reason I point that out is because when you put a web app builder on GitHub Pages, it's important to know that you need to turn Jekyll off, and I'll show you how to do that in a second, because if you don't, it'll mess up your URLs. But really, GitHub Pages kind of works just like IIS or Apache or Nginx or any other kind of web server. As long as you're just focused on the static files, you can't do any kind of like rewrite rules or any of that kind of stuff. But when you set your site up on GitHub Pages, what you'll end up with is a URL to a website. And it will be just like this URL right here. So you'll have whatever your account name is on GitHub, and GitHub accounts are free, so anybody here could set one up. And then it would just be .github.io/your repository, and that'll be a website that'll be set up. And so now I'm going to attempt to do yet another live demo. So we'll see how this goes. Dun, dun, dun. Right. Okay. Whoops. All right. So let me hop back over here. So this is the organizational account for the city of Asheville. You don't have to be part of an organization to get up on GitHub. Anybody here can get on GitHub. How many people actually are on GitHub here? Oh, it's okay. A fair number of you, right? How many people have used GitHub Pages before? Awesome. Pretty good number of you guys then. Awesome. So I'm just going to show you, for the folks that haven't seen this, I'm just going to show you how easy it is to create a repository. It's really as simple as just clicking new and then just giving it a name. I'm just going to call it demo for right now, and just going to initialize it with a README file. That's just so there's actually some sort of file actually in the repository. And then just click create repository, and it creates a repository, and it's actually as easy as that. But then through the power of or movie magic, I'm actually have created a repository already that already has a directory called closures in it, and that's right there, and another README file. And the reason I went ahead and did this is you can do a lot of stuff with just editing GitHub files and folders and stuff like that online. But the one limitation that you have is you can only upload 100 files at a time. And these web app builder like directories that you generate from the web app builder have a ton of files in them. And so I just use GitHub command line to push this directory called closures up there earlier. You could use the GitHub desktop tool if that was something you're more comfortable with. It's really pretty easy to do. But all that is inside this directory is just just what you would be generated from the web app builder. So it's just that same directory that you would drop in IIS or Apache or whatever your other web server was. So to get this up and running, the first thing I'm going to do is go over to settings and scroll down. And I am going to point the source to the master branch. And so when you create a new repository, everything's in the master branch, so that's all you really need to worry about. So I'm just going to point it at that, click save. And while this is getting that site set up, I am going to hop back over here and create an index.html page for this. And I'm going to steal some code that I wrote earlier. Oops. Why is it copying like that? So it's just some super basic HTML, and I'll explain what it is in just a second. So I can just create a file right here and call it index.html. So this is just giving me just a landing page is all I'm really trying to do here. And all it is like some super basic HTML. It just has one anchor tag, which has a link to that closures directory, and it's called street closures. And so I can just scroll down and click commit. And then we have an index.html page right there, and I need to create one more file. So remember how I was talking about the Jekyll runs behind the scenes in GitHub? Well, you can turn Jekyll off by creating a file in the root of your directory, and that's just a .nojekyll file. And you don't have to put any content in there, just as long as that file is in there, Jekyll will not run on your repository. So just commit that file. And now we have a repository with an index.html, that .nojekyll file, a little README file, and that closures directory, right? If we hop back over to our settings, this should be green down here. Yep, so the site should be up, and if this actually works, that'll be awesome. So I should be able to click on this. Yep. And so this is our little HTML page that I just added, and that's that one anchor tag that I threw in there. And so this should just link to the web app builder directory that I put in there. And it'll take just a second to come up. Right, so this is our transportation closures app from the city, and generating the web app builder and being hosted on GitHub. It's super easy to do. Anybody can do it. Yeah. All right, so let me hop back over to the presentation now. Okay, thanks. 4 minutes. Where is a live demo? Is that the right one? All right. All right. Well, we're at the conclusion.
Yeah, so we're pretty excited because we were really able to reduce our server load, and this is still a work in progress. We're still working on pushing more to be hosted. One of the good things is GitHub loads really fast, so there's really sometimes even faster than our local server. We're spending less time managing those servers, more time making maps. And we also have some resilience from hardware failure. If the city network goes down or a server crashes, Map Asheville or downtown map still works, so people can still use it. This was kind of a time-consuming project. It was not hard at all. It was really easy to do, but when you're really busy, adding an extra project can be a little hard to manage. But it was pretty easy to do. GitHub is really easy to learn. It was really only my second or third time using it. And one thing that I really like about it is now that anybody who makes apps in our city can have GitHub on their computer, have their own repo, push it up to the GitHub site, and they don't have to get on our server. So we don't have to share anymore, which is great. I'll just skip the last one. All right. We definitely appreciate you coming and listening, and we invite you to ask questions, or if you have any thoughts or ideas or anything that you think might be a better way or some help for us. Also, if you want to reach out to us, you can reach out to me at the City of Asheville. But unfortunately, Cameron...
Yeah, I only got like another week left of the City of Asheville, so I will not be there for you to reach out to.
If you want to find him, you got to go out west. Question, yeah.
So, am I correct in understanding that if there were a new road closure, you would have to upload that closures directly over again? Or is this treated?
No, it's dynamic because for the road closures, that's a different one because the data needs to be like immediate. So that is just a hosted service, and we have our traffic engineer actually edit it right on ArcGIS Online, so that those are immediate since they're transportation closures.
How long did it take to upload that directory? What time did it upload?
Like 20 seconds or something like that. It's super fast. So like any of the web app builder stuff that you put up on GitHub or anywhere, the data is still all dynamic. So as long as you update the REST endpoint that the layer is pointing to, then it will be updated. So So you just do that once, and then, or if you want to go back and like actually change the code, like the UI code or something like that, then you would need to re-upload it, or check it out and do your changes and then commit it.
So it's basically the shell that we're hosting, and then the map is on ArcGIS Online. Thank you. That was a good question. Anybody else? Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome that you're using GitHub for hosting. So I know they have rate limits now on how many times the site can be accessed. I think it's a really high number, but is that something you've thought about? Do you have enough users where that would be an issue?
So, sorry, I'll repeat the question, I guess.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
So the question is, I guess GitHub has rate limits on GitHub Pages now, and whether or not that's an issue. No, that's not an issue at the city right now. It would be awesome if it was, but it's not.
Someday. Anything else? Or anything you've done or anything?
I noticed with the hosted feature services on ArcGIS Online, they have a really limited labeling engine, and you can't do things like case lines. I was wondering if you guys kind of ran into that and had to make a choice if that was worth it for you.
Yes, absolutely. The question was about ArcGIS Online services having some limitations for labeling and symbology and stuff like that. Yeah, we had to kind of like accept that we couldn't do some of the labeling, and so that's a really good point. You lose some.
Do you have a sense that they're going to keep improving that, or
Is there an ESRI rep in here? I hope so. I feel like it's constantly improving. We've been really lucky.
Using two instances of ArcGIS Server, one for internal and then one for external for application use. Is that something you guys knew right off the bat, or did you end up there through some internal?
The question was about using two instances of ArcGIS Server, one internal and one external. Do you want me to do that, or you?
We can do it if you want.
Well, in order to serve water data, which had to be secure, into one of our enterprise apps, we had to be able to, which wouldn't take any kind of authentication or security or passwords. We had to produce the internal only services for that application. But it's also been really helpful for making apps with water data that only internal people can see, for the stuff that has to be secure.
So that's your method of not getting around, but arriving at authentication problems?
Right.
Yes.
It's where like the enterprise system doesn't properly take advantage of like REST services authentication, and so they just want some REST layer they can point at that has no security around it, and so that's what we do. We just, as long as they're inside the network, anybody can pull that information.
How many internal users?
Well, I think we have like Scott. Here's my boss. How many internal users do you think we have? Sorry, put you on the spot.
probably dozens, maybe? I don't know exactly.
Yeah, it's not a lot. Yeah. But there's probably like 100 and something GIS users across the city.
Thank you.
Cool. Thank you so much.